Hello guys, Forristicat here. Today I want to put forward my thoughts on the US, not the UK version of the comedy series on NBC named The Office. Now this is something I wanted to talk about a while ago, however just I never got around to doing it, but it was sort of like on my backlog of video segments I wanted to record for talkbackworld.net. And I thought, given that tomorrow the final season of The Office, season 9, premieres in the US, I thought, well, perfect opportunity to talk about it before the series starts again for the final season tomorrow. So first and foremost, I came into watching The Office sort of later on down the track, so I had like a lot of seasons to catch up on watching. So I had like about 5 or 6 seasons where I sort of went bam, 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 and just watch all these sort of episodes, one after the other. Now this sort of like, what can I say? Like it was a fun ride. I don't usually watch that much comedy, purely because I think like, coming from my personal perspective, it takes like quite a lot to make me laugh. I'm not sure if I'm just like too much of a serious or intense person, or if there's something else going on here, but it requires like a very sort of like particular joke to get my sort of like sense of humor flowing out there. So I like Ali G, I like Family Guy, I like The Cleveland Show, purely because like there's just so much like shocking things that just sort of come out of nowhere, and Ali G because, well, just seeing the people react around him as if he's serious and he's holding his like frame and like his the character so well, I just think it's absolutely hilarious. Now I actually work in an office, so I can relate to the office situations quite a lot, even though the office is sort of like just this this sort of like catalyst for all the comedy coming through and stuff like that. But nevertheless, hearing a new episode of The Office is coming out, I decided to sit down and watch these episodes, and I found that these episodes of The Office were actually funny, and it was actually a good comedy series to add to my small segment of high quality TV shows that I will actually devote my time to. I think everyone should watch a bit of comedy. I think that if you sort of like just watch serious stuff all the time, like all horror or sort of all action, like I think like you do need to watch some sort of comedy to sort of like snap you back and say, what, life's not that serious, lighten up, let's make fun of serious situations. So I guess I think it's funny because you can sort of like, if you work in a corporate like IT environment, or you're in an office itself, it's funny because like some of the people that I work with in my office, like I can imagine like sort of writing. I wouldn't even have to write like a comedy show for what happens in the office. Like some of these people that I work with are just so ridiculous, and so many ridiculous things happen there that the show would kind of write itself. But nevertheless, like it's funny to see like all these stereotypes pushed to the extremes with all our characters that we actually have in real life in this US version of The Office, which is of course first and foremost massive. I cannot express how fantastic Steve Carell was as Michael Gary Scott. I mean, unbelievable. And I must give reference to a tweet tweeted by Rainn Wilson, I think, who plays Dwight Schrute, of how how the hell did Steve Carell not win an Emmy for his portrayal of Michael Scott? It's just unbelievable. It's one of those things like, I haven't seen him in that many other movies, but like seriously, the way he played that character to the hilt, it wasn't acting. Like I mean, like of course acting is always acting, but there's a couple of moments like in Fandom where like you can't really see where the guy who he is as Steve Carell ends and where Michael Scott begins. Like it's really like a seamless performance. So massive props. You got other characters, of course. You've got Jim Halpert and Pam, which is like one of the sort of main romantic storylines, which started throughout like the first couple of seasons. And what must be mentioned is, and this is another thing, like for me, like for romance storylines, I really don't give a shit about stuff like that. Like I seriously don't care. Like I'll be like, oh, okay, that's nice in the background sort of thing. very rarely will I sort of care or be invested in what happens between like a male and a female character. I'm like, whatever. But for one reason or another, And talkbackers were probably like, oh, well, Forristicat wants to date someone in his office, so that's why he can relate. That's not actually the case. For some reason, just purely like the amount of like tension that was built up between Jim Halpert's character and Pam Halpert. Well, Pam, who before she got married to him. It was so extreme that I thought, you know what, like for once, I really want these two characters to sort of connect and like have a relationship. And as I was watching the backlog, I'm like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Like, I actually cared about a male and a female character on a television show actually getting together and for things to work out. And that episode, I think it was the casino night, where they sort of had like a casino night. Like many people on like Reddit.com say that like that's their favorite episode of The Office, and I think it's definitely one of my favorite. And comedies have got to be careful, like when they become serious, that they'll always snap
back to being like a comedy. Like you can't have a comedy then like all of a sudden like you change to something being serious. You just can't do that.
Just one sec. So basically, it was important for like these serious moments to happen, and then after the serious moments happen, like it has to go back to being a comedy. So when like the moment where like Jim actually like tells Pam, what, I like you, and this I know you're married to this guy, but I like you so much more than a friend, blah blah blah. And then he's fully like tearing up and stuff. I'm like, wow, like this is something like I normally don't care about, but here I am on a comedy of all places actually giving a crap about what happens between this character and this other character. And then at the end when like he just sort of like walks up to her as she's like on the phone to her mother, and then boom, just kisses her. I'm like, wow, that's pretty fantastic. Like I don't want to come across as like a non-macho guy or whatever, but like those episodes like affected me. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like I didn't really think that would sort of be shown in a comedy sort of area, and it actually worked out. So then again, all these other characters, of course, like we got Karen, Andy Bernard, Nellie, which came later on. Pam, you got like I have to scroll through. I'm hopeless with names, as like Dwight Schrute, Stanley Hudson, Phyllis, Angela, Kevin, Oscar Martinez, Meredith Creed, which is the creepy guy, Erin, Daryl. I mean, there's just so many characters to be named. Gabe later on. Was it Robert California, and like his mother, with the dogs and stuff like that. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. So I remember reading a couple of comedy books, and like basically jokes do not come from lines. Jokes come from the characters behind the lines. So if you're one personality, you say a line, it may not work. Another person can take that line and actually make it work and make people laugh. So I think that the writers have done a good job of sort of like writing different types of characters, different stereotypes. The boring guy, the kiss-ass guy, like Dwight Schrute always wanting to get the manager's approval and stuff like that. Sort of all these different sort of race and backgrounds, and I think it really does well to sort of like help the writers sort of like to write the jokes and the characters and scenarios for these characters in this office fictional world in Scranton, fictional environment. So what else can be said? I think that when Steve sort of like left the office, I have to make comment that it's like okay, how can this sort of show continue? And I have to agree that I think like Steve Carell was the office. I think that the whole series should have ended really with him leaving. It's just he was too much the heart of it. I can compare it to say Kiefer Sutherland leaving 24. It's like, okay, Jack Bauer leaves 24. What the hell is going to happen next? I mean, seriously. So I think that was sort of indicative of sort of like the quality sort of going down, especially with the introduction of this new character Nellie, who was like a special projects manager. There was a lot of criticism for her and a lot of like hatred towards her, and people were like, don't diss the character, the actress, diss the character, if anything. But nevertheless, I think that I think the writers were trying some new stuff there, but they just hated her. But then people were like, honest, like you were meant to actually hate this character. So I can sort of like side with you were meant to hate her. So I think all the complaining was just like a little bit over the top in that regard. Nevertheless, I think that with many TV shows, the first couple of seasons were very funny, very amusing. I remember one of the entrances was like all the characters sort of dancing, and like Dwight like running through the office, or like Steve, Michael like sort of like dancing to the tune of something, and they're just walking around, like people like showing from like the lights and stuff, and there's streamers and balloons everywhere, and there's some sort of like musical intro to the show. There's basically so many scenarios that I can't really pinpoint all, considering that we've also been on a break from The Office as well. But definitely all the pranks, or Jim plays on Dwight, that's a classic as well. I think it's interesting to have sort of like a TV show like focused in sort of one area, and sort of having all the jokes maintained. What can I say? Like, it's a different TV show to sort of like any other TV show I've watched. I've enjoyed watching it. I work in an office, so I can sort of relate to it a little bit more on that level. I think that the writing has gone down over time. Yes, unfortunately, like there's how many more sort of ideas can these writers put forward? Of course, they're going to have to introduce new characters. Some work out, some don't work out. Like Jim Halper's like love interest and stuff like that. That they came and they went. Also, introducing like different sections, and like traveling to different areas. Like Washington or whatever. They're definitely trying some new stuff, but unfortunately, the juice, the heart, like the main comedic pump, the pulse of the main theme and vibrations or whatever of The Office was definitely Steve Carell. And so sort of when he left, they really are sort of like trying to spin their wheels to sort of get some sort of that oomph back. And I was reading some sort of like threads on sort of I think on Reddit about The Office, and it's like like they have to bring Steve Carell back for this final season, and like you have to have like Steve Carell and his love interest. I can't remember what his love interest was, where like he kept on proposing to her time and time again. Holly, that's right, Holly Flax. I really think that it should end with him and her sort of like, this is not my sort of idea, like they're talking and then he says something like that's what she said, which is like the classic sort of like tagline of Michael Scott, and then boom, like it just ends like that. And I want to see some montage with all the characters and stuff, because this is the final time that we're going to be seeing all these characters together. And I think that's one of the main things I was thinking about this other day. Like, I think that's why like I'm not sort of like getting into not getting into movies as much as I used to, because unless the movie is like a very well structured movie, to actually like understand the characters and stuff straight up off the bat, it takes time to get to know our characters as well. So the story, the movie has to be a quality movie to begin with. And if I'm watching like a 2-hour movie, like I'd rather watch like a good sort of TV show, knowing that over time I'll get to know them more, because TV shows go on for longer, by definition. So having said that, like we've gotten to know all our characters, for a long time, and we've grown attached to them. I definitely like, I'm going to be sad once this TV show goes. So like when I'm watching this final season 9, I'll be thinking, damn, like we've gone on this emotional journey with all the characters. We've seen everyone's love interests, all the sort of like characters, how they changed, how they've remained the same, how they've sort of like had rivalries and people pitting up against each other, how people have become jealous. It's just an emotional roller coaster. And another thing which I must mention before this review is over shortly, like the wedding between Jim and sort of like Pam, and like like how like you see like in Steve Carell's eyes, like he's sort of like he's really tearing up, and like that's when I think like boom, like that's right there, like perfect moment, and like you find yourself like getting teary-eyed even though you're watching sort of this comedy movie. And I remember like there was some music playing in the background. Oh, this is fantastic! Like it's one of these scenarios where it feels like I'm hanging with friends every time I watch the TV show. So of course, when this TV show ends, I'm gonna feel like I've lost all these friends. So I think that The Office is definitely a decent, above average sort of TV show. I think they have been trying to sort of get the sort of show going again once Steve Carell has left. I think the introduction of the California characters like Robert California and Mrs. California with her Dalmatians, like even though I didn't find it funny per se, I found it like so ridiculous that someone would bring like Dalmatians into an office scenario. And that's right, like Robert, just the way like he's just so weird. Like he's always trying to like be like some sort of like Renaissance man, and always quoting like old poetry and old references, and I remember one episode, like, they're having a pool party and he's like talking about a penis, but he's talking about it like in a really strange way, and like at the end they just get smashed, and you know, like Toby, which is the boring guy, you know, they're all sort of in the same room with Gabe, and it's just like, I couldn't help but laugh because it was such a ridiculous situation. So, you know, with 40 seconds to go, The Office final season starts tomorrow in America, so, you know, get the episode whichever way you can. Definitely a good comedy series in my opinion. The writing has gone down over time, unfortunately. However, not without the writers trying to sort of get some of that juice back, which was sort of excreted, so to speak, when Steve Carell actually left The Office. And please, for this final season, NBC, I want to see Steve Carell, aka Michael Gary Scott, back for the finale of The Office. Thanks guys, Forristicat signing off for his thoughts on The Office US. Cheers.